with a saffron medley rice and some roasted acorn squash and asparagus and some homemade cheddar bay biscuits. So let's start by getting the stuff ready for our saffron rice melody, because that is what's going to take kind of the longest to bake up or cook up. Actually, freeze that. I want to do my squash first because that's what's going to take the longest to cook. So I've got 3 acorn squash. We're going to cut them in half, scoop out their seeds, and then we'll roast them up in the oven. So it takes hardly any time, but these are, my oldest son has been requesting them a lot. He absolutely loves them. And so I was like, you know what? It goes well with fish on there. And then I've got this giant one right here. And not quite as easy to cut through the bigger they are. And okay. Whew. And now what I'm going to do is scoop out the seeds here because we don't need the seeds. Getting them on there. So we'll scoop all the seeds out and then I'll put them on my pan upside down so that it seals in the moisture and it allows them to roast up and get nice and tender. And then we'll add some butter and brown sugar at the very end for it. This big one is full of a lot of seeds here. And just get these last little scrapes out. There we go. Not wanting to come out. I'll roast them at 400 degrees because we're going to be baking our biscuits at 400, so we'll need them to go in there. Here. And just kind of scoop them out for these. Now, I mean, you can always technically roast up these seeds, but I would find they're not as good as pumpkin seeds. They're very dry. They crunch really, really hard. So they're not the greatest seeds for eating, even though they are in the squash family. Okay, one more. These little guys are easy. Although, whew, I got seed confetti here. Okay. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to place these on a baking sheet to roast up and then the oven. So again, with this, you don't need to do anything. Just place them on your, I'm going to grab one little seed right there. Place them upside down like this. This is going to trap in the moisture of the the squash, and it allows it to get nice and tender on the inside. Pull off a couple more of these seeds. Let's miss them. Here. And last one. And then we're going to go pop them in there and we'll let them roast up and they'll get nice and tender. And then at the very end when we're cooking, we'll take them out. We'll add a pat of butter, a little bit of brown sugar, and a little bit of garlic salt, and they'll be so delicious.
Yeah, like what kind of squash?
This is acorn squash on there. So they're probably one of my favorite ways to eat it because it is, it's not as smooth of a squash as like butternut or buttercup squash. And it's still not even as smooth as pumpkin, but it has a really it's a lighter flavor, so not as strong, more mellow, but very, very lovely. My kids love it. Now, I'm not sure of how much they love the squash versus all of the brown sugar that they love to put on there. They're always like, I'll put a scoop and everything on there, and they're like, can we have more brown sugar? So they love it. But if it gets them to, eat the squash, eventually maybe they won't do as many scoops of brown sugar. It's like salads. If the salad dressing is the vessel to get you to eat the salad, you're halfway there. Okay, for our little rice medley that we're going to make, I'm going to saute up some veggies and we'll add in our rice and we'll cook it up. I'm going to use some saffron, some homemade chicken stock, and then a little bit of water for it to flavor it up as well. And I'll give these a nice small little dice on here so that they'll saute up nicely. I don't want my onion pieces to be too big. I want them to kind of blend in with the rice and everything so that you've got little bits, but we'll add a great bit of flavor. And it's now kind of, you're getting into that spring, the warm weather. It was like 90 degrees today. Got up to it, felt like it. I think it was 88 or something like that. But when I got into my car, it said 90. So it was very hot. We had 2 soccer games today. And so we were out and about for that. But I was like, the weather is so nice. It's so warm. It's crazy to think like a week and a half ago, we had it was snowing a little bit.
Yeah, question. Were you able to get more butter?
I was able to get more butter. I got 7 more pounds of butter. So hopefully that will last us, although I'm technically down to like 6 because we made Swedish pancakes for breakfast this morning. And then when we got home, everybody had sourdough. So we toasted that up. And so we're getting down to our slowly dwindling. I'm like, where did all the butter go? And I'm like, it's because it's delicious. Okay, we've got this. I'm going to start it on a 6, and then once it gets kind of warmed up and starts to saute, I'll turn it down just a little bit. But I'm going to coat up everything. We'll get these working. And then we'll make our biscuits in just a second to go in. The biscuits only need about 15 minutes to cook, so I'll wait a little bit before I start them. Okay, we've got some sweet peppers, a zucchini, and then we'll mince up some garlic as well. But we're going to saute all of that, and then we'll get our rice going. So some good flavors in our meal. Okay. And so I've got red and yellow sweet peppers, which are going to add a lovely flavor, a nice little pop of color too, which will go well with the saffron. That will kind of give a nice yellowish color. It'll make a golden rice for it, but great flavors. Kind of, I was going to say, the idea was kind of like almost like a fish paella, deconstructed paella, kind of having a nice saffron rice. And then, of course, we'll have our pan-seared halibut, which will be lovely. I'm very excited. This is the first time we're trying the halibut from the seated table box. I've been cooking through all the different cuts of fish that we've had. So I'm kind of very excited for this one because this is what their like most expensive fish in there. So it's more expensive than their Alaskan king, but you can sign up and you can pick like one of the free fishes. So I was like, ooh, I'm gonna pick the halibut as my free fish because I love halibut on there, and so I'm excited. Yeah. Okay, we'll give that like a little bit longer to kind of get toasting up. I'll mince up my garlic, and then we'll get our zucchini going. And then we'll make a nice little fresh herb kind of sauce to go on top of our fish as well for it. I was thinking about a beurre blanc, but then I was like, yeah, maybe. Might just do a lemon fresh herb sauce. I'm going to mince up some garlic here. And these will add some great flavor to our rice medley. I feel like back in the early 2000s, late 90s, we did a lot of rice dishes and stuff like that, like rice pilaf and just different types, red beans and rice. But I don't know, I just don't do as much rice as I just felt like I ate rice all the time as a kid. It was just one of those staples. It was like Uncle Ben's or the Nature's like Reserve, or it was the box ones. I just remember or having that, or the Vigo in the bag. We did that a lot. Here we go. Or rice-a-roni. There we go. That's the one. A little San Francisco one. We're going to add in our sweet peppers here. We'll give them a quick stir. Kind of coat them up. And then we'll let them cook for just a minute or two before we add in our lovely garlic here. But I'll work on getting our zucchini diced up. Now I'm going to dice up my zucchini, kind of how I did the other day when I made our, ragu kind of marinara sauce. I want each piece to have a little bit of green, kind of the outer skin on it. It helps it stay together better without it getting mushy when you cook it up, because that inner basin can, you know, just kind of mush away if you don't have a little bit of that nice skin on it. And then just a smaller dice on it. Because again, I don't want super huge veggie chunks in here, but just lots of little ones that will go well with the rice. They're not too overpowering. Okay, my eyes are getting a little sting on these onions. There we go, looking good. And then I'm going to add in my garlic before I get to the zucchini, because the zucchini will let out a little bit of liquid, and I prefer my pan to stay nice and kind of a crisp heat to it. We'll mix that in. Lovely. Oh, the fresh garlic smells wonderful. Okay, I'm gonna get my hands and rinse it real quick. Got a little bit of garlic on there. And I'm gonna grab, I need to get my mortar and pestle. So where, I'm trying to remember, I moved it because I was like, there it is. I was afraid that one of my kids would try to grab my mortar and pestle from up high, because I always kept it up high. And I was like, oh, if this falls, it's gonna, my thing is like, it will either hit a kid or it will crack my countertop. And I was like, we'll not do that. So we're gonna mash up some saffron. I'm gonna put a couple saffron threads into it, but by crushing it up here, it's going to release more of the yellow coloring into our rice to give it a golden one. Just doing the little individual like pestles will give you a little bit of that yellow color, but crushing it is going to give you a lot more. And you don't need a whole lot. This weighs next to nothing, and a little bit goes a long way. Let's get these all in here. And then I'm just going to use my little mortar and pestle here, and we're going to crush it up. And then I'll add actually a little bit of liquid in here to bring all that flavor and stuff out, but I'll let it crush right now. And it's going to just create almost like a lovely little bright orangish powder for it. And you don't need a whole lot. This is going to dye it pretty golden. It's going to make it beautiful.
Yeah, question, is saffron expensive?
It is expensive. It's because if you buy it by the weight, but you actually don't use a whole lot of it. So you're not using it in the same weight bulk as you would salt or other spices. So a little goes a long way for it. And, you know, but I will say, like, typically one of these containers are like $6 to $8. And if I'm making like my saffron bread and I make a whole bunch, I'll use one whole container with it. So which is a little bit more, because it's typically a spice container when you buy it, lasts you a long time, you know. For like my little risottos or my rice medleys, I can make 4 or 5 dishes out of it, but definitely more expensive. There we go. Give this a nice little toss around. We're gonna let those veggies kind of crisp up real quickly. And then I'm gonna measure out 2 cups of rice and give it a quick rinse for this. So we're gonna scoop out 2 cups of rice, and I'm using jasmine rice, and then we'll give it a rinse for it in the sink to kind of get all of that little bit of powderiness off of it, but then we're gonna crisp it up in our pan for a little bit. So this is a 1/2 cup, so I'm gonna do 4 of them. 2, 3, and 4. With this, we're all done with this guy.
Pauline.
Well, thank you, Pauline. We appreciate that. I'm gonna give this a quick toss around now that my pan is getting nice and hot for it on there. Okay, let's rinse this rice real quick. We'll get it going. A nice little mix around. You don't need to rinse it for a very long time, just enough to get that kind of powderiness off of it so that you'll have a nicer texture on it.
How many people are you feeding tonight?
So tonight we are feeding 9. My parents, most of Sundays, my parents eat with us at our house. So 9 for dinner tonight on here. Now, a couple of those are just little ones, so you know, they don't eat quite as much. But We're going to toss this around, kind of coat it up. We want it to kind of crisp up nicely for this. And then we're going to use about 3 cups of broth, and then like I'll also use a little bit of water with this. And then I'm going to add a little bit of water in here with my my saffron. Add it. So I'm just going to get a little cup here. And let me grab this while we're at it. So I'm going to add about a half a cup of water to this. And as you can see, it's going to make a really lovely kind of golden color. Give it a little bit of a mix around more. This is going to allow me to get all of it out instead of just trying to get the powder out for it. And I will say, if I bought a mortar and pestle again, I probably wouldn't buy a white one because my saffron does dye it and I have to scrub it really well after it. We're going to add a little bit of that in here and then some spices, and then we'll get this lid on to start to kind of, so we're going to pour this in first. So we got most of it out of there. And then I'm going to add a few extra tendrils of saffron. This is going to give you more flavor throughout, but it's not going to give you as much color. Crushing it allows that color to really come out and give you this beautiful golden color to your rice. And it was very few, but look how gorgeous it looks. And I'm going for a more mild saffron flavor, which will be lovely. Okay. And then we're going to add in I'm going to use my chicken stock here. So this is my homemade chicken stock. I'm going to put about 3 cups in here because we use 2 cups of rice. And so we just need a little bit on there. And then let me grab a ladle. Now my chicken stock right now is a little bit gelatinous because it's made with, real chicken. We kind of boil the leftover kind of carcass is down. But once it hits the heat, it will thin out. It's going to have so much flavor into the rice dish. So that chicken stock and then that saffron together will be lovely. And then, of course, the garlic and the onions. So 2 cups. And then we'll do 1 more. And now 3 cups. We'll mix everything up, and then it will be, we could bring it to a boil just like you would cook regular rice. And then we'll turn the temperature down and cover it and simmer it on low. So similar processes to making rice, but of course we've got our extra of adding in the veggies and some of the spices. Then I add a little bit of garlic salt in here. And then at the very end, we'll add some fresh green onions and parsley. Gorgeous. Just mix around, kind of deglaze any of that rice that may have stuck on in the beginning. Beautiful. And then I'm going to turn it up, and once it comes, get all those little saffron tendrils off. Once it comes to a nice boil, we will bring the temperature down and put the lid on to let it simmer. Just a couple shakes of garlic salt in here. Okay. Beautiful. Lovely. While that's coming to a simmer on there, make sure it gets to a good rolling boil. Let's make our sourdough biscuits. We're going to do kind of cheddar-based sourdough biscuits, which are one of my favorite, and I feel like they just fit really well with fish. I don't know if it's because they're kind of like a copy of Red Lobster's cheddar-based biscuits. So to me, when you go to Red Lobster's, you eat seafood or fish or whatnot. We're going to start off with a half a cup of sourdough discard. So we'll get this measured out. And it'll be perfect because then I can feed these guys up tonight so that they'll be ready to make some more sourdough bread in the morning. Let me grab my spatula. So half a cup of sourdough discard. And these are a drop biscuit. And so no press and fold. So really, really, really easy to make, which I think is what makes them so delicious is when you don't have to work too hard, but yet you have something that's delicious. We're going to add in a half a cup of melted butter. There we go. Make sure you let it cool just a little bit so it's not scalding hot. I'm going to grab myself a dough whisk here because I don't like to over mix my biscuits, especially my drop biscuits, because you don't want them to get stiff. And over mixing when you have like a butter base will make them more stiff and dense and less fluffy. Okay, we've got our butter mixed into our discard. We're going to add in 3/4 cup of milk, and I'm using whole milk. I'll mix this in here, kind of diluting it all up. Lovely. Kind of mix it around here. And then we're going to add in a teaspoon of baking soda and a teaspoon of baking powder. So those two together are going to give you the nice puff on our biscuits. So 1 teaspoon of baking powder, and then 1 teaspoon of baking soda. And then we're going to add in a half a tablespoon of garlic salt. And that's going to give you a nice garlicky flavor to it. But we'll also be making kind of a nice, lovely garlic herb butter to go on top of the biscuits once they're done baking. We're going to mix that in, and then we'll add in our flour and our freshly grated cheddar cheese. So give us a good mix. This is going to, once the baking soda and baking powder start to hit the sourdough discard and that mixture, you're going to get it to fluff up and get nice and fluffy. And then I'm going to give my rice a nice little stir over here because we are starting to get a lovely simmer on it. So I'm going to stir it, kind of make sure nothing is sticking at the bottom. And then as long as it goes back up to a nice rigorous boil when we're done, then we will put the lid on. So always stir it, and if it's not immediately at a rigorous boil, let it sit for another minute or two because you want to really cook through that hard shell of that rice to get it nice and fluffy. So don't rush the part. Okay. So here's our base. You can see that that baking soda and baking powder are reacting with that sourdough discard, which is making it nice and fluffy. We're going to add in 2 cups of all-purpose flour, and then we'll toss it until it's just combined, and then we'll grate in about a cup of cheddar cheese. So 1 and 2. Put this to the side. And this seems to be back at a good rigorous boil. So 1 last stir, and then I'm going to put the lid on. I'm going to bring the temperature down to low so that it can simmer nicely. Go right there in the middle. Put the lid on. Beautiful. And that will allow it to steam up and fluff that rice. Let's mix in our flour into our sourdough, milk, baking soda, baking powder, and salt mixture here. And butter, lots of butter. So we're going to, again, mix it until it's just barely combined. Again, you don't want to over mix these biscuits because then they won't be as nice and fluffy. And then we're going to grate in a cup of cheddar cheese. And I like to use freshly grated cheese because it has a slightly better melting point because there's no anti-caking agent. Grab my grater right over here, and we'll grate this up. Now, you don't need a whole lot of cheese to get to a cup on there. This right here is probably 2 or 3 cups in it because it kind of fluffs out. So, and I always say, grating your own cheese is cheaper than buying it pre-shredded, and it melts better because there's no anti-caking agent on it. And the fun thing is I love to, sometimes I'll change up my cheeses and my spices in these biscuits. I think like the other day I did a Italian cheese, like so Italian seasoning and mozzarella. I've done Parmesan and black pepper. So you can really change up the flavors and kind of make these biscuits a little bit different to kind of fit what you're making. think that's pretty close to a cup there. So you see, good amount of cheese left. You don't want to add too much cheese into these biscuits, or they won't have the right consistency because that cheese will inhibit the baking process. And then just mix them up until, again, just barely incorporated. And you're going to have kind of a slightly sticky but crumbly dough here. Again, don't mix it until it's smooth. I'm going to just clean off a little bit of this saffron on my counter. There we go. That way I won't have to scrub too hard later. And then we're going to shake these up, and then these take about 15 minutes at 400 to bake. So we'll pop them in the oven in a few minutes for it. Now I like to do, now you can do these kind of randomly, like make bigger ones, smaller ones. I typically aim to get around, I always like to say around 9, sometimes 12 biscuits out of here. Whatever I grab for my first size is what you are, but you can make them smaller or bigger based on it. Just when you're shaping them, do not press them firmly together. I am very delicately, kind of no pressure at all, just making them shape up into a ball, but you can see it's a very loose ball. That's going to give you a really light and fluffy biscuit here. So you just grab it off, and again, just very, very gently bring it around, and that's going to give you, again, a wonderful, flaky, fluffy biscuit. And I just try to make them roughly the same size so that they bake up. Now you can make them smaller or bigger. You'll just have to adjust the baking time. Bigger typically means that you need to bake them a little bit longer, about another minute. And smaller, you'll just, depending on, you cut off 30 seconds to a minute to the bake time.
Yeah, question. Have you ever found a good store-bought biscuit?
I love Red Lobster's Cheddar Bay biscuits in the box. There are times when I will buy those because I just want to be quick, or sometimes when we're out, like at my sister's lake house, we'll just, buy that because I won't necessarily have my sourdough discard. I do love their biscuits. I mean, they're so good. When I was a kid, my older brother worked at Red Lobster, and we were always like, figure out the secret one. And he was like, there's no secret. It just comes in a big bag and we mix it together. And I was like, oh, but they're so good on there. I will say I make most of my biscuits, everything like that. So there's not often that I end up buying biscuits for it. But these are one that are good store-bought too. Okay, I think I've got enough. I'm making 10, which means there'll be one extra for tonight. So we'll see which one of our kids will end up with it. I'm just gonna steal a little from the bigger ones on here. I realized that I did not make these very evenly. And so I'm just gonna borrow, and I can probably make another one from them. Again, because if they're all very different in sizes, then the bigger ones won't bake up as nicely. Take a little bit from that one. There we go. And again, beautiful. Okay, we've got them on here, and they also puff up a good amount. So they're so good. And we'll get these in the oven in just like a minute or two. I'm going to start prepping up our asparagus. And then, you know what? Well, we can drop them in now. We'll be fine. Because with the biscuits, just like with most baked goods, you don't want to eat them when they're right hot out of the oven because they need time for the butter to set. So what I'm going to do with this, I want my squash to go down because biscuits need to bake on the top.
Yeah, if I found those biscuits made with sourdough discard.
They are. They have a half a cup of sourdough discard in it. So here are my lovely squash. I'm going to put them right down there. And we're going to put our biscuits on the top rack. We're going to bake these at 400 for 15 minutes. So they don't need a lot of time to bake, but they're so good. But always put them on that top because that direct heat on top is going to give you the best rise on them for it. Okay, let's get our asparagus ready, and then we'll get our fish seasoned up and ready to cook off. On here. Well, you know, let's see. So we're gonna have, I'm gonna see how much asparagus we're gonna use. I've got several on here. It was like buy one, get one free at the store. And you know me, I love a good deal. So I'll give it a quick rinse. And then with asparagus, you always want to chop off the bottom inch or so. If you have ones that are really white down there, cut off a little bit more. And this is going to give you a nice tender asparagus that isn't dried out. These bottom ends get so fibrous, they're like almost like chewing on a stick.
If you want to be really safe, you could throw the whole thing out.
No, you couldn't. Asparagus is wonderful and delicious. My husband needs to embrace more vegetables in his life. More vegetables. Here we go. We're going to bake this on 2 sheets because of the way I'm baking in there. I'm going to rotate and we'll have them on here. So we've got our first round of asparagus prepped, and then we'll season them up, make them delicious. I always, when my kids were little, they weren't picky eater, but they were questionable eaters. And so I always would make names up for food using other names. So my kids all ate broccoli. So these were called broccoli spears. And then cauliflower was snowy broccoli. And Elsa was big at the time that Elsa had frozen from the, things. And like my kids love salmon. So shrimp was like salmon, like salmon swirls, and scallops were salmon bites. Because I was like, they're all in that, And that's kind of how I got them to eat everything, was I just told them it was some other thing, tilapia was white salmon. And now they're really good and they'll eat a wide variety. The funny thing is, so my son Teddy, who's 4 years old, he's very into ancient sea creatures and ancient animals. And so he likes to call this the titanoboa when he eats it, which is the ancient giant snake that was a boa, but acted like an anaconda. I've learned all about the titan boa because of him. But that's what he goes. He's like, more titan boas, please. And I'm always like giving him there. And you may play with him while he eats stuff, but he eats them. So that's a win in my book. Okay, let's season these guys up and we'll get them ready. These will go in the oven like 10 minutes before we're done cooking everything so that they stay on there. We're going to give them a nice little drizzle of olive oil. Here we go. And then we're going to sprinkle a little bit of onion powder that will give them a nice savory flavor and kind of a little bit of a crispy edge to them. Here we go. And then we're going to do a little bit of garlic salt. And a little bit actually goes a long way of the garlic salt. Asparagus kind of clings well to it. And then my last thing that I'm going to add on there is black pepper, which I think I left over here. So I'm going to go grab it. Here it is. And just a little bit. I find that black pepper really brings out the flavor on oven roasted vegetables because the heat really brings out the pepper flavor, and it's just lovely. So we'll pop these in the oven when we are a few minutes out from there, but I always like to give them a quick roll. That way the spices and the oil all kind of completely coat it and not just on top. There we go. Perfect. Okay. Slide these over here so we can get them in just a second. And then we're going to season up our fish and we'll start pan-searing it off, and then we'll make a lovely little sauce to go. So I've got my halibut here. This is from my sea-to-table box with it. So they all come frozen, and then you de-thaw them. And then I already squeezed a little bit of the extra liquid out of them. But right before I want to season them up, I'm just going to go through and I'm going to pat it dry because that is what's going to give you the best kind of sear up on them. It's just making sure they're not waterlogged. I think that's typically, the biggest problem when it comes to working with frozen fish or even thing is that the freezing process can waterlog it. Now, the nice thing is they just flash freeze these after it, so it doesn't go through the typical freezing process. So they actually feel like fresh fish when you de-thaw them, but you do want to make sure you get that extra moisture out of it. And that way you'll get that lovely crisp sear up on it. And I said, it's been nice. I did this. We're a big family. So, of course, I had to order like 2 boxes for it. But I did the pescatarian package, which has just all the different fishes. And it comes with like 8 or 9 different fishes. And so then we get, enough to feed our family with 2 boxes of it. And we've been loving the extra kind of the fish.
Do you have a question where you order it from?
It's called Sea to Table on there. So when I was like going through and looking at, because there's a bunch of different seafood like places that will, deliver an order. This was one that had the biggest selection of fish. A lot just had like cod or pollock and salmon, like different types. This one had a lot of different types, and the price was really good for it. Because me, I had to compare what you get, how much you got for each one on there. Okay, let's see. Before I put my oil in there, let's season these guys up. I forgot to set out my lemon. I'm going to get a quick lemon here, and we'll do a nice little squirt over it. There we go. I think I was craving lemons, so I bought 3 pounds of lemon this week. So I have 2 more packages. So I think we might use a lot of lemon because it's just when the weather is so warm, you just want that nice, refreshing flavor. Okay. So we'll use half of this for right now, but just a good little squeeze of lemon juice over the top of each one of these pieces of halibut. And I'm going to keep the spices fairly simple because we're going to make a lovely little fresh herb sauce to go on top. And that way for some of my kiddos who like it just a little bit more savory and simple, they'll just have a simple fish and then we can dress it up with ours.
Do you buy seedless lemons?
Apparently I buy seedless lemons. I ordered from Amazon Fresh and they were what you could get. And you know what? I was noticing that because sometimes I'm like, gosh, these lemons have no seeds in them. And other times I buy a lemon and it has like 1,000 seeds in it. And that's really annoying. And you know what? I actually am surprised. Amazon Fresh has a lot of great stuff. It's actually really, really reasonably priced on there. Now we live outside of a big city, so we get it. So that's kind of a barrier to getting Amazon Fresh. But ordering my groceries from Amazon Fresh or going to my local grocery store, I save about $100 to $150. So it's a pretty good savings every week on there. Now they don't have everything, but they do have a pretty good selection of stuff.
Do you do couponing?
I do not really do couponing unless with Amazon Fresh, they have coupons that you can attach to it with there. So unless it's easy for it, I always sit there and I feel like I would be really good at couponing because I'm like really in like detail oriented on a lot of things, but I have no time for couponing. But I feel like I would be the person on those shows, like extreme couponing on there. Although I do feel like I sometimes have our house stocked as if we were on extreme couponing, because what I do, at least at the beginning of the month, I do for a lot of my big items like toilet paper, paper towels, and like drinks, I get them a subscribe and save through Amazon, which allows you to save like 15% off of them. And so I ordered 2 boxes of the big things of paper towels and lots of toilet paper and everything. And they have to sit in my garage because it's so much. It's crazy.
I have a question. Can you go over what you're seasoning the fish with?
Yes. So I've got freshly squeezed lemon juice on here and then onion powder, for it. Then we'll do a little bit of garlic salt. And honestly, that's what I'm going to keep it really, really simple because I'm going to make a nice kind of herby sauce that we'll put on, and that will give you a burst of flavor. But just keeping it very simple. I'm going to do a little bit more onion powder so it sticks on there. The onion powder gives it a really great savory flavor and gives it almost a nice little crust to it. And so that will be lovely. And then garlic salt, because I love garlic salt. So I'll just go ahead and kind of like a simple savory lemon garlic for it. And then we'll pan-sear it for it. There we go. And I'm going to start heating up my oil here, and then we will get our asparagus in the oven for this. Now, this is the only problem with this little bottle. I like it for some things, but when I need to put like a tablespoon of oil in here, it takes me forever. Okay, we're going to start heating our oil up on high, but when I drop them in, I'll turn my pan down to about a 6, 7. I want to like sear it off on there. I feel like I just need to do that now because that's what my kids do whenever I accidentally say something. Okay, let's put our asparagus in the oven, and we can give our biscuits and our squash, we'll give it a quick rotation here on here. So let me slide this right here. And look how beautiful these guys look. So I'm just going to rotate them sideways because I can fit it all that way. And then this is the nice thing about having these half sheet pans, because I can't fit 4 full sheets in here, but I can fit my half sheets in here. Very, very important, especially if you ever have to cook a whole bunch of stuff at one time and you have different things. So like I have the big sheets that take the whole oven, but I'm cooking 3 different things. So I needed a little bit of variety there. So it is wonderful to be able to use that part for it. Okay, let's see if this is nice and hot. Once this is hot, we will drop these down and start kind of sauteing them. And then when the biscuits come out, we will make a lovely herby butter for them. But right now, we're going to cut up some fresh herbs, and we're going to make a nice kind of a lemon creme fraiche with lots of fresh flavors for it. So let me get a bowl. And this will be great to spoon over the fish and just make it lovely. Okay, so I'm going to mince up some garlic. And I will say fresh garlic works the best on this because it's not as pungent as garlic, which has been kind of sitting in a very acidic base. So this is a bit more mellow and lovely. And then we'll take a peek at our rice in just a little bit, see how it's cooking up on there. It should be doing well. With the cooking rice, this is a little different than a like risotto, like a medley. You let it cook like regular rice. So yes, you add the sauteed veggies and everything in the beginning, but then it's just regular kind of finishing up cooking process for that. Okay, we've got our minced up garlic here. I'm going to mince it just a little bit finer because I want it to have nice little bits of flavor all throughout. There we go. So this is going to get me around a little shy of a tablespoon, but right around that. There we go. We're going to add that in here for it. See how my pan is getting there, not quite hot enough yet. You can typically tell when I can feel enough heat coming off of the oil that it's ready for it. We're going to add in some green onions for our little kind of herby creme fraiche. I'm going to grab, I think 2 will be enough for it. Give them a quick rinse. Although these green onions are, I want to say, like halfway to a leek. They're very, very big. I think I might just use one on this one because it is a very big one. I'm starting to hear a good sizzle on my oil, which means I think we're ready to drop our first fillets in. So let me grab my fish spatula and some tongs. And then I'm going to drop my largest fish first because I want, that way they'll have a longer resting time and won't get as overcooked. So pick your thickest one, not necessarily like your long, like this one's my longest, but it's thinner. I'm going to take my thicker fillets first and we'll drop them in here. Get our next one, and I'm just going to do 3 at a time for it. Now these cook up fairly quickly, so you don't want to, you know, you don't have to worry about it if you want to do it right towards the very end of it. I'm getting a little bit of a splatter just because that's, so I'm just going to put my splatter guard on, and then we're going to go grab our biscuits out of the oven. Just a little. And then we'll make our herby butter as well for it. Okay. Beautiful. I'm going to move this up here and look at these gorgeous Cheddar Bay biscuits. They look amazing and they've got that nice touch of goldness on them. I'm going to actually grab a trivet real quick while I'm over here. But oh, so pretty and delicious. And I already know which one I want. It is going to be this one with all the cheese that is melted and delicious on it. Again, our sourdough Cheddar Bay biscuits, which are got garlic in them and sourdough discard flour, freshly grated cheddar cheese. And then we're going to make a nice herby butter to go over the top of them, which will just be lovely. So you don't need a whole lot of butter for this. That's the one thing is sometimes I do get these out of the box and I'll use like 2 boxes. And for 2 boxes, they're like, use a whole half cup of butter, like a whole stick of butter. And to me, that's way too much butter. You need just about 3 tablespoons to brush over the top. Let's look at this. Looking lovely. I'm going to rotate my pan here because sometimes I get a nice little bit. When I'm about halfway through the coloring of the fish going up the side, I'll flip it on there. Kind of a nice visual to be able to kind of peek at. I'm going to cut my green onion, which very much is like a baby leek here. And then we'll mince it up so that it will have a nice oniony and garlic flavor to our creme fraiche. And then we will add in some fresh basil and fresh parsley, and then cream, lemon juice, and garlic salt. So it'll be really bright and happy. You could also add in fresh dill if you had it to give you more of that kind of a lemon dill sauce flavor to it. And that's one of those things where every year I plant dill, but I think the weather in Tennessee is just too hot because my dill always grows really tall, but I don't get very many prongs of dill. But I do know that caterpillars love dill. I always, whenever I do that, I'm like, Teddy, let's go check it out. And there'll be like 50 caterpillars on my dill plants. Okay, take a look at this. I'll slide this right over here for a second. Beautiful. I'm going to go under with our fish spatula, which is a long, skinny spatula, and I'll slide it up. And then I'll use my tongs to flip it over, and then we've got this just lovely, gorgeous golden brown. That is from the onion powder on there. It gives you a nice crispy like edge on it, but no flour or anything like that. Gorgeous. These are looking amazing. And then we'll cook them up. You need half the time on this side because it goes really, really fast. So most of the cooking is through that first one, and then you flip it over and it will be on here for about a minute. I'm going to mince up some fresh basil, and then I'll get a plate to take these off and we can get our second round cooking on here. Oh, this smells lovely. Although I said my little basil plant over there is recuperating, but still not enough to use it. I need to give it a little bit more time to recoup. I'm going to grab a plate so we can take these guys off. And again, you don't want to overcook your fish because overcooking will give you a rubberier tongue. And knowing that these will continue to cook after they sit. So perfect. You just kind of visually know when they're cooked all the way through on the side. This is our lovely halibut. Gorgeous. And first round done. And now we're going to get my pan, and we'll put our next round in here. And then I'm going to turn. I'm going to get my butter off over here real quick. And I'm doing my slightly thinner pieces this round. This one's a crazy piece here. It's got a little tail. And we're going to let them sear off, and then I will finish up our sauce, and we'll be just about ready with everything on here. But looking good, looking good, looking good. Okay. Our butter here is nice and cooked, so I'm going to remove it from the heat. We're going to add in a little bit of garlic salt and onion powder, and then we'll be able to brush that over our biscuits right before we serve it. But an onion powder, about a teaspoon or so of onion powder, gives you a really nice savory flavor to it, and then about a teaspoon of garlic salt. Beautiful. And then we'll let those kind of infuse into that butter for just a second, and then we'll brush that over. Be gorgeous. Okay, let's mince this up. And then we're going to go grab our asparagus out of the oven because we don't want it to overcook. And we're down to the final stretch here. Just finishing up our yummy little sauces and getting everything. I'm going to mince up. Let me get that onion little wrapper out of it. Mince up my basil, which will add a nice, lovely flavor. Lemon and basil work really well, almost like a pesto flavor to it. So we've got our basil in there. And then we're going to add a little bit of parsley as well. We'll mince these guys. And then we'll add in some cream, fresh lemon juice to curdle that cream so it thickens it up, and it will be this lovely little herby base. There we go. We got that here. I'm going to rotate my pan just a little bit. This is my hotter side I found right over there. Get that. Let's go grab our asparagus out of the oven. That way we can finish up the rest of our dinner. We'll grab our squash as well. If it's ready, it should be close to it.
I have a question. How's the cookbook coming along?
It is going really, really well. We're almost there. I'm going to take my squash. The way you know you're done is when you give them a good squeeze. You see how if I push and they dent in. So that's when you know they're nice and soft and ready. So we'll take this out, and then I'll come back for my asparagus. Need to grab. It's kind of hard to grab things with these lobster ones. It's easy to get a pan, but if I have to pick up something off the counter, impossible.
Have you taken any culinary classes, or are you self-taught? I
am self-taught. I have never taken any culinary classes, but I have been cooking since I was 13 years old, and I love to cook, and I love experimenting with different things on there. Here is our beautiful asparagus. You see it has this nice, vibrant, bright green. That's when you know it's ready. It's got that tender, crisp kind of for it. So it'll still have a little bit of firmness to it, but it will still be tender all together. And put this right here, and then in just a second, we'll get our squash going. But I want to flip our fish, and then I'll finish up our creme fraiche. Beautiful. And then just use your tongs to help you guide it over for this. Beautiful. And there is our wonderful halibut. Just gorgeous here. We'll let that finish off in about a minute on there. Let's get our creme fraiche going here. And then we'll put our squash. We'll put a little pat of butter in and brown sugar in our squash. So with our fresh herbs and our garlic and our green onions, I'm going to cover it up with enough cream to kind of make a nice little herby base in here. And you essentially want enough to put a spoonful on everybody's fish. And then we're going to squeeze it with fresh lemon juice. This one's a very juicy one, so a half should do it for it. Don't mix it in yet. You just want that juice to sit on top and kind of curdle that cream. And then we'll add some garlic salt and give it a good stir to get that base here.
So you have a question? Did you brush the acorn squash with anything?
I did not brush it with anything. It is just you scoop out its guts and then you bake it upside down. And that natural, like the juices inside it will allow it to come up. So I'm going to switch this over here and then we'll flip these guys over. And that way I can get my brown sugar in them. Sometimes I feel like I need an even bigger kitchen. And I can't imagine for years I had a tiny, tiny kitchen. Like my kitchen ended right here and right there, tiny. Okay, so you're just going to take your spatula here and you'll flip them over. And voila, you're going to have these just really tender squash boats. And we've got this jumbo one, which is halfway to a pumpkin. I'm going to break this off if I can. That way I can, there we go. That way I can sit it upright. Otherwise, they're hot. There we go. And then we're just going to take, before I do that, I want to get my fish out because I don't want it to overcook and on there. Because that can wait. These thinner ones cook a lot faster. So we're going to bring it on our plate, which is why I do the thicker ones first, because we are a big family, which means I can't cook everything at one time. So I have to cook some of it in stages. And so when I'm cooking my meat, I always pick the ones that are bigger to go first. Here, slide this right over here. And should be good with that for a second here. I'll bring this, I can do it right over here. Let me grab a little bit of knife. We're going to cut the butter and put it in here, and then we've got to brush our stuff over. I always like to do these bigger ones. I'm going to do a slightly bigger one in them, but then the other ones just, a little pat of butter. The residual heat from baking it will melt the butter. And it's nice because they're like little squash boats. And then you're going to add a little bit of brown sugar. Now, my kids will say you're going to add a lot of brown sugar because they love the brown sugar aspect of it. And I think that's how I got them to eat it first. But for these bigger ones, I'm going to give close, a little bit more. But then the smaller ones, you don't need quite as much. But just a nice little sprinkle. And that is going to melt with that butter and make it almost like a nice sweetened glaze for it. And then a little sprinkle of garlic salt. That sweet and savory just work well together. And coat that up beautifully. Again, if my kids had their right, they would fill the boats up completely if they could. And then a light little sprinkle of garlic salt. There we go. And I like the garlic versus just regular salt because it gives you a nice savory flavor to it. Okay, beautiful, beautiful. I'm going to brush our garlicky herb butter over our biscuits here. Gorgeous. Oh, it's going to be so delicious. These, the kids, everyone loves these. So just really coat this up. This gives these biscuits that extra herby, savory flavor. This is butter, onion powder, and garlic salt. So just wonderful. And you can also, sometimes I'll change the spices up. I'll add Italian seasoning. You can also add that to the butter at the end to give them more of a pop. But you don't need a whole lot, but just enough to make them so, so good and delicious. Okay, let me stir. I've got to get this stirred, and then we're going to stir our creme fraiche, and then we'll be ready to serve up.
Mary sent you good.
Well, thank you, Mary. We appreciate that. This lid's hot. But our rice should be just gorgeous and beautiful. Look at that. This is our lovely rice medley, so I'm going to turn the temperature off. We're going to give it a nice kind of fluff around. How gorgeous is that, guys? So delicious and amazing. Just another way to sneak in some extra vegetables here. Beautiful. Oh, thank you, Linda. We appreciate that. And then let me grab a spoon to stir this creme fraiche up. We're going to add a little bit of garlic salt, and then we are going to be ready to serve up and eat, which is perfect because everything is just about ready there. So about a teaspoon or so of garlic salt, and then we're going to mix it up. We're going to mix that lemon juice in here, and as you can see, it's going to thicken up this. And then I actually kind of like to use my base of my spoon to kind of mash these herbs down in here to really bring out this wonderful flavor. But we're going to have garlic, basil, parsley, lemon juice, and green onion. So just some great flavors. Okay. Let's get ready to serve up dinner here. Okay. Such a feast. I'm going to bring all of my little remaining bits over here so we have everything somewhere nearby.
Half and half or heavy whipping cream? Heavy
whipping cream, because if you use half and half, it's too liquidy. There's too much milk in it that it doesn't curdle as well. So you'd have a very runny sauce. So, okay, guys, we are about ready to serve up here. I think we should be great with everything. Okay, I'm going to start off with one of our squash boats first. That way we can take it here. For dinner tonight, we have our acorn roasted squash with brown sugar, butter, and garlic salt. Some oven roasted garlic asparagus with black pepper and garlic salt. And then we're going to serve it with our saffron rice, which has just amazing flavor from our homemade chicken stock. We have chopped up sweet peppers, zucchini, and onions in there. And then what we're going to do is we're going to place a fillet of our halibut that we pan-seared on top of that. And then we're going to give it a lovely dollop of our fresh herb creme fraiche with garlic, basil, parsley, lemon juice in there. And then, of course, let's not forget our sourdough cheddar bay biscuit as a lovely little grain for us tonight. Well, guys, thank you so much for joining us here. Don't forget to like and subscribe. I try to do live cooking shows every single day, kind of show you what we're making for our family and hopefully teach you guys something along the way. Again, we do upload all of our videos to the link on our page. So if you ever want to recreate any of these recipes at home, you can just go to our page and search for what we made. We've got our acorn squash, our saffron rice medley, halibut, asparagus, cheddar bay biscuits, and you can always watch and cook along with me again. We also have a link to our Amazon storefront that has all of our different cooking gear and gadgets in it. I've got my knives, my bakeware, my all-clad pans, all the different things that I use in the kitchen I have in there for you guys to check out. But again, thank you so much for joining us here.